This is a Flying Cow production.
Well, hello and welcome back to Must Watch Movies, the podcast where my friend Jack Allison and I introduce each other to new movies, whether we like it or not. I, of course, am your host, the Flying Cow himself, Clay Johnson, and here with me, as always, is my guest, co-host, whatever he wants to be called today, the two-time Teddy Award winner, the good boy, the Lord, Jack Allison. Jack, how are you?
Well, I thought I was a special guest until now, but I guess guest is a step in the right direction. All I have to say is well played, sir. You know, when you told me last time that you wanted to watch Teen Beach Movie, I was skeptical.
Yeah.
Okay. I was like a teen. I looked it up too. I was like, okay, this came out in like the mid 2010s, I think.
I think it was like 2013, something like that.
So I was skeptical, but then you mentioned that, that
2013.
Kiefer liked it, and then you mentioned your mom liked it.
Yep.
And I follow Kiefer on Facebook, so I confirmed that she liked it. And yeah, well played. I folks at home, let the record show. Seriously, good, because let the record show, folks, that as of today, I have given my recompense for North.
Oh, geez. Okay, so I will say, I genuinely like this movie. Okay.
What? Wait, really? I'm not being. Okay.
I genuinely like this movie, but as I was watching it, I was like, because I realized you're the first person that I have suggested this to that I don't know your level of like musical love. And I also realized how many puns are in this film.
Yeah. It's when they said the movie they were watching was called West Side Story.
Yes.
I was wondering up until that point, but when they said the title, I said, all right, is this because of North or because of Nothing But Trouble? I'm leaning more towards North on this one. Because again, I figured you had Hannah in on this one too. There's a plan here.
No, honestly, I genuinely like it, and I know Hannah genuinely likes it too.
All right,
I will say though,
it's
part of
her time. Let's call her ass up. I got questions.
No, I mean she would not have written she didn't even know that I was going to suggest this to you. I suggested this to her last year as part of her 40 to 4K thing. I knew that she would like this just based on what I know about her. I wasn't really I will say though, this I think is the first time that you and I are going to be on opposite sides of a film, because as I've been thinking about it, I'm like, you know what? Even the ones that we both think are like iffy, like we land on similar wavelengths. Like, even when I suggested The Stupids and I was like, it's got great funny parts, but ultimately it doesn't work. We both found things to enjoy about it, and we both found things that really didn't work about it. And even with Nothing But Trouble, you were not suggesting this saying this is genuinely a good movie. You were suggesting it because it was an interesting conversation.
It's not a positive experience, it's an experience. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think this is the first time that you and I are coming at a movie where I genuinely enjoy it. Now, I do completely see your side,
Hmm.
but you obviously feel differently about the film than I do.
I mean, to your point, look, like if you know me, as far as movies go,
Mhm.
like I'm very pro healthy discourse when it comes to like movie discussion. I think, especially like in this internet age, like where like people like are arguing, like think right now like about a fucking Captain America movie that just came out that I didn't see. So like I'm like, and just saying horrible, hurtful things back and forth. I am very pro. Let's talk about art, whether we like it or not, with
Sure.
other people that feel differently, and have a good conversation about it. So
Yeah.
and to that point, and to what you were saying, I am absolutely like open to that type of discussion on this because I don't think we're going to come to like arguments and like and name calling from this.
No.
And I'll be transparent. There are movies that I have on my potential list that I've considered throwing your way that I love dearly, but I've met a lot of people, and I won't say expect, but I
Yeah.
would not be surprised if you fell in line with a lot of my other friends that have said this one wasn't for me for XYZ reason. Which again,
Sure.
they've brought reasons to my attention that I can appreciate. That being
Yeah.
said, when I mentioned discourse, with this conversation, I am going to be open minded in how we discuss.
Sure.
I have this movie. I did not have the same feelings as you did about this movie,
Right.
but I am willing to admit that I can be at least swayed in a positive direction with it, pending a
Sure.
proper conversation on the film.
Gotcha.
But yeah, do you want to introduce the movie since I've
Yes. Yeah.
let me, actually no, sorry. I do want to leave with a positive just so it's not starting all negative. This movie did
Right.
remind me to take my medication on time.
Did it?
Yes. So I do appreciate it for that above most
Oh,
things.
okay. Okay. All right. So, just to kind of give people an idea of what we're talking about. So the film is Teen Beach Movie. It did come out in 2013. It is a Disney Channel original movie, which means that it aired on the Disney Channel. It was made specifically to air on the Disney Channel. And it, let's see. It was directed by Jeffrey Hornaday, and stars Ross Lynch, Maya Mitchell, Grace Phipps, Garrett Clayton, and many, many more. So this film is basically about two teenagers that they're in the middle of a summer romance kind of thing. It's supposed to take place, in a more realistic reality. And then they get caught up in his favorite movie, which is basically like a ridiculous um 60s style musical that is basically a play on like West Side Story, but it's, greasers versus beach bums type of thing.
Hmm.
And it is a musical, and they get sucked into the world of this movie and into the rules of musicals, and it's ridiculous. 100% flat, honestly, it is ridiculous, but it is intentionally ridiculous, which is what I appreciate about the film.
Yes. I guess my log line personally for it would be I think the film would agree on this one. It is Back to the Future meets Pleasantville meets Last Action Hero.
Yeah, there's definitely elements of
Meet Schmigadoon.
all of that.
Schmigadoon is obviously a big one too.
Sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, I watched this for the first time because a podcast that I was listening to was reviewing it, and so I was like, let's just put this on. And it was just fun, silly, enjoyable to me. And it also kind of, I grew up with like those early musicals. I'm talking like, Music Man, Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, what's the other one that I'm thinking of? Singing in the Rain. These types of, you know, musicals that, you had to be like a quadruple threat back in the day. You had to be able to sing, dance, act, all of this type of stuff to be able to do. And so this really kind of reminded me of that. Like, obviously, you know, in a Disney Channel platform. But it really kind of reminded me of those types of films, which is part of what I appreciated from it. And I feel probably also is one of the reasons that Hannah appreciates it as well. Because she also, grew up on those types of films. I will say that to me, the movie doesn't really kick off into what I feel is the sweet spot until they get sent to the movie. I feel like the first bit of it is really very overtread teen Disney version melodrama, and if the movie was just that, we would not be, I would not have forced you to watch this movie. But
again, I did make you watch North, so there is a through line.
This was not an intentional, I'm going to make Jack watch a movie that I know he's going to hate.
Again, I remind you, West Side Story.
I get it. And like I said, I know, and believe me, when the podcast I listened to, that was one of the things that they could not let go, was how horny that name sounded. Because it's just like, what the hell? It is a ridiculous name. I will say, even though it is mentioned like several times in that scene, and like once when they get into the film, after that, it's almost completely dropped. You can almost completely forget that that's the name of the movie that they're now in. But I really enjoy the aspects of because of these real life supposedly teens in this hyper realistic world. Because what's so fun about it for me is that you're getting two people from opposite sides of the musical spectrum. You're getting the guy like me who would have loved to have been sucked in this ridiculous musical life and been able to kind of enact, and become part of this, and be part of a dance number and all this kind of stuff. And then you're also getting his girlfriend who thinks that musicals are ridiculous and thinks that all of this is dumb, and suddenly she's being forced to be part of this world, and just the way that she reacts to this is part of the funniest parts of the movie to me. But I feel like the film is constantly commenting on these types of things and how ridiculous they are, but at the same time showing off how cool and fun and impressive they can be as well. And I also feel like the music, maybe not 100%, but it feels like music from that type of, beach movie from the 50s or 60s. It feels authentic to that. Obviously with, the Disney Channel flair or whatever. But it's fun. It's fun for me. And I know it's the opposite for you. So how was this this process for you, Jack?
So again, I'm cheating our audience because this is an Audible podcast, but I've changed my background photo to a picture my wife took of me while I was watching this.
Did she watch this with you?
Until she tapped out. Yeah.
Okay.
It was late for her.
Okay.
So to be fair to her, yeah, she.
It wasn't that she hated the movie as much as you.
I wouldn't see why anyone would hate this movie. Okay, okay, I got to be very careful with how I discuss, because again, my goal is not to argue. My goal is not to, again, just like go through every criticism I have and nitpick the shit out of it and be like a wet blanket. I'm also, I guess, for people listening at home, before I say anything about this movie, I'm writing it down just as a reminder to myself. Just, it's always gonna be in the corner of my eye. I'm writing it down. I am aware that this is a kids movie.
Okay.
I'm underlining it. I'm putting it, here it is. You hear that? Yeah, I'm putting it right here in my peripheral. So whatever I say, that is going to be on screen for me to see. I want you all to know I am aware that, based on everything I'm about to say, this is a movie that is not intended for my age and demographic.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna meet you. I'm gonna start with an attempt to meet you in the middle. I
Okay.
agree that it does not start to pick up steam until they actually get it transported into the place.
Yeah.
Because the way it opens is very much like smack you over the head, exposition heavy. You know, they walk in from surfing. They talk about how great things are with the two of them. They go in to talk to the weird, awkward grandpa, who sometimes talks, but like when he does, you're just kind of confused about why he's there. Aside from just establishing that she's not living, this underage girl's not living on her own.
On her own. Yeah.
And then it
She's
cuts
not
to
Lenny Frazier.
and he's watching this movie on the TV. And like my first thought, that's like when I started like thinking to myself, oh no, was it cuts straight to the TV and it looks it looks like it was shot on like the same camera they were shooting this on. And again, I'm aware, folks, this is a kids movie, but they cut this movie that came out as the movie establishes in 1962, and you have this beautiful, like high resolution, high saturation, super poppy, super like amazing cinematography. Well, I mean, by modern standards, like modern cinematography
More
style.
than you'd expect from a 60s movie.
Yes. And then they recount the entire plot. And I will preface, I did not know the plot of this movie at all going in. And it's when they recounted the plot and they started like listing off like a bunch of crazy things, like real estate evil guys with a weather machine, and the bikers and the surfers going head to head in a beach off, Barbie reference. I was like, all right, we're going the Pleasantville route. We're gonna have two people who, one of them is very passionate about this artistic medium, the other one is not, and they come to a mutual appreciation of one another, and also the thing that they're inhabiting. I'm just sorry. I'm trying to think without my head hurting, because it's also late.
Sure.
Okay. Okay. So, all right. I'll lead into a disagreement just because it can open the thing up for a conversation.
Okay.
I one of the things that bothered me immensely throughout the movie, again, I'm trying to be careful, is, and again, I understand, folks, I gotta keep prefacing, but I know there's someone out there who's thinking this. I'm aware that this is a 2010s Disney movie made for a different demographic than me. It drove me up a wall how much the 60s/50s thing that they were going for felt more like a veneer than an actual attempt at recreating the vibe as a whole. I guess maybe that's my biggest problem throughout the movie. And again, that's just, it's a very blanket statement, but I guess you mentioned the Disney flair of the music. I'm cool with that sort of thing. I guess when you have like the very poppy sounding like voices and singing and type of like melody on top of like the sound design and feeling like they're speaking. And I know they did this in the 60s as well, like where it was like, pre-recorded in a studio and then sung in front, but it didn't.
Right.
When you watch those movies, like this movie, I think what it was going for reminded me of like scenes from like Viva Las Vegas, the Elvis Presley movie with Anne
Sure.
Margaret. Like I think of like a lot of those.
Well, and I think that's the kind of vibe that they were going for.
Yeah. Where like your dance scenes and musical scenes are cheating out towards the camera. And again, it sounds very like we recorded this in a studio, but we're like, we're doing our thing around that. But you'd have moments in this where you'd have a lot of the actors in this movie, particularly like the principal singers, and this is very common, especially with teenagers, is your singing voice, especially when you're a teenager, sounds very, very different than what you sound like in your speaking voice because your voice is changing.
I mean, I will say there was at least one actor that was dubbed.
Okay. Was it the head biker guy?
Yes.
Yeah, that was my guess.
Yes.
Okay.
He was not singing for this one. Apparently he did his own singing in the second one, but for this one he was dubbed. I will say I noticed this for the first time last night. All of the lip syncing is horrible. But, yeah. Well, there are certain things that because I'm used to the Disney Channel mold, I just kind of it rolls off.
That's okay. I would be hypocritical to judge it for that because I mean, actually, funnily enough, we didn't bring this up but in our last movie, Death of Dick Long, there is a scene where like the coroner blatantly like says a line like that's ADR'd because it cuts back to him as the line's finishing and his lips aren't moving. Right. So, shit happens. I get that. Just the very poppy. Like again, there's a surface level like I think attempt to capture the 60s thing, but I understand like they're the people who made this aren't necessarily like it's not like necessarily a passion project for the people everyone involved on the creative side. I don't think, but I think what would have improved my experience with this a lot more was at least technically speaking if there had been more of an evident effort put into recreating a lot of the look of the 60s beyond the stereotypes of like biker surfers, the surfer type, the that I want what that music that instrument's called.
But I mean, if you watch those like 50s and 60s beach movies, that's very much what they are is veneer and very shallow polish.
What I mean on the technical is more so sound and editing and video and visual design. Like
sure.
A little bit of,
I mean, I think
filter over this would have like improved it so much for me. It's a very simple but very effective thing they could have done.
And just to go back to what you were saying before, I don't think Disney Channel is concerned with that because their audience isn't concerned with that. Do I think that you have a point and it actually would have added to the aesthetic if they did it? Absolutely. But I also know that that's not something that they're interested in spending their money on because their audience isn't going to care.
Well, and I guess that's why like it's not even necessarily like how it looks within. It's also, I guess, I'm not going to go into a diatribe about this, but this is also like a similar comparison, a complaint that I had about the Barbie movie that came out recently that bothered me with like the real world and the fantasy world that we have back to back. There's Barbie's obviously very different with its production design, but with when it comes to like, I guess, okay, let me cut the. I guess how I would have maybe done it if I'm Disney and I'm saying like, hey, I don't want to like this, 90% of this movie to be, grainy, with like more muted sounds. Like again, I understand like the cost and also just assuming the audience won't care. but I almost like would have gone like almost like a Wizard of Oz route if I wanted to circumvent that, where when they're watching, like maybe like a little less saturated, like just visually distinct coloring to color grading to the actual like real world that they come from. And when they're watching the movie, when they're watching like the film on the TV, then you could put the film grade, make it look old and
Sure.
old. And then when they go in there, then suddenly they're like, whoa, looks so then you can have like the colors popping and it can be like this whole new explored, like how it ends up being shot.
Yeah, I mean, I do wish, I mean, there is a lot in the movie world that feels artificial, but I do agree that they could have pumped that up a little bit more. And even if it was just like a like a different tint to the real world than there is to the movie world, or as you say, color saturation or something like that. I mean, I will say for the most part, I do feel like they dress more vividly in the movie world simply because of the sense of those costumes. But you're right. There definitely are some technical things that could have been done. I just, again, don't feel like that was a priority for them.
Well, and again, like, they came close in parts. That's why like we'll be like a little bit conciliatory here. It's like they like I noticed, like especially in the end when she's surfing the big wave, the way they showed them surfing in the beach world, the fantasy world, is very much the 60s. Yeah, it's very clearly like green screen right behind it.
Blue screen at that time.
Yeah, exactly,
like
exactly.
Chroma key straight up. Yeah.
And then you cut to like the modern day when she's actually surfing the wave and it's not straight on. It's very much, it's, I mean, you could tell it's faked in some places, but I forgive that.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously they're going to have a double doing the actual surfing.
For sure.
Things like that, yeah.
But the fact they show different angles and they show like, different like shot styles, like I'm like, that's
way more dynamic. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they recognize like there is a distinguish you can put here. So I guess I wish they'd just gone further. Again, I think
gone to another level with it. I got you.
Again, I know that they're not making this movie for guys like me or like even just adults in general, but I think you could have it's almost like the 30-year like cycle. Do you know what that is? Are you familiar with that? Like how like 10 years ago we had like the 80s everywhere. This year it's the 90s.
Oh yeah.
The 2000s it was the 70s. I feel like they could have made like almost like a love letter to it if they had kind of bridged the gap a little bit more to show. Cause I don't know how old these writers are. I don't know how old the director is. These filmmakers are, but I think that there's a passion that's there. Again, it's just like when you talk about the hair and makeup, there's a lot there. That, like again, like the what's her name, Amy Winehouse looking chick that's in the movie. Like there's clearly like an attempt, like hey, we're familiar with this. There's also moments where I found myself wondering if the people who made this movie, whether it be on the writing side, the directing side, had watched more than one or two movies of the actual era of that style, versus not. And again, I'm not trying. I don't want to linger on this. We can move on, but as far as like an immersive element, again, as a 30-something-year-old guy that I am, that's something that I just kind of wish I had more of throughout the film. Because again, have you seen Pleasantville?
Yes.
Yeah. Like I'm not saying like, obviously that's black and white. That's a very different case, but to see that kind of effort put into just a consistent approach of capturing the genre and the time period would again, that would have made me forgive.
But again, that is also on a movie motion picture budget.
Yeah.
This was, the beginning of kind of a turning point for DCOMs. Like this was just a little bit after, I think, the first High School Musical. And, those...
I think like after the third one, actually. The High School Musical, I think, kicked off this type of thing. Because we had Zombie, I think, came around the same time. Like I think High School Musical, I think, came out like in early to mid.
Okay, it was 2006 was the first one, so it was definitely after that. And I know the second one was just like a year later.
Yeah.
So I think I think you're right, but it it did come out like it's in like a turning point, even though like that one took off. Like they still weren't giving huge budgets to like all of their films. There would be
Yeah.
some that they, and I do think that this was one that got a bigger budget, but they're still on Disney Channel budgets. Like now they're like like okay, so it was an $8 million budget in 2013. So I mean, good for TV, but
Yeah.
that's still a pretty low budget film.
And yeah, and again, I accept the budget thing. Like I said, like even if it's a cheap filter, which I mean, like, if you watch enough of shit like that, it's like you can pick out like a cheap filter, like a cheap grain filter or what have you over, like an actual like again, I don't expect them to shoot on film. That's ridiculous.
Sure.
And again, I guess I should preface for people at home.
Well, I mean, especially not in 2013.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I've seen the zombie musical trilogy from Disney. There was original movies, and I got through the first two. The third one, when the aliens came down, they're just people in white wigs. I went outside and broke a window. But again, like I'm aware that like
I'll be honest. I had kind of that irrational. Why do I expect this from this movie from the first Zombies? I wanted it to be angrier because there's a very palpable discrimination vibe to that film.
It's very
and
soft.
There is a character that feels like an angry person of color, and I wanted it to go more that direction, and I had to keep reminding myself I really shouldn't expect that from this Disney Channel original movie. I should be grateful that they're going as far with it as they are.
I look back,
I really had a hard time shaking. They could have done so much more with this movie. But yeah, no, I get it. I get it.
I guess so. Again, like we can let's get off the topic of that because I don't want to like lean to like the next. Let's discuss the positives more.
Sure.
And then I'll argue against you from. I'm just kidding.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Say something nice about the movie, Clay.
Okay. I the highlight of the movie to me is the music. My favorite song in this film is I have two, but we'll talk about the biggest one first. It is now all of a sudden I can't find the title. Oh, here it is. So it's called Can't Stop Singing. So there's a bit where they are starting to realize that they're getting sucked into not only they're already having to take part in the plot of this movie, because I haven't mentioned the fact that at a certain point, this is supposed to be like a West Side Story type of thing. Two people from opposite sides of the tracks, fall in love, and everybody gets mad at them and all this kind of stuff. Because they've been sucked into this movie, they accidentally mess up the meet cute.
Yeah, it's
This
like
is the Back to the Future thing that you were referring to.
Can we talk about this? Is a little thing, but can I bring one thing up again?
Yes.
Sorry to quote Kanye, but I'm going to let you finish. But first, I want to say Beyonce. I'm kidding. Only time you'll ever see me quoting Kanye.
I was about to say, really don't want to be quoting Kanye right now. No.
Okay. I'm probably nitpicking, but I gotta ask. It looked weird to you the way that she fell off that stage, right?
I mean, I will say I've never really broken that down. I mean, I am like, why are you turning at this point in the song?
Yeah, exactly.
She's actively singing.
Yeah.
When she's doing it.
Well, they have three microphones, like three stand-up microphones that are like mic stands at the about 3 feet from the edge of the stage. And then she walks past it because she's not singing anymore. She steps past it.
Yeah.
Towards the end, she's looking out, and then she just starts to twirl. And I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, anything weird within the movie world, I'm fine with, because it's supposed to be a dumb 60s musical.
Mm.
So anything that doesn't make sense in the logic there, I'm okay with. What the issues that I have with it are when the real life people do things that don't make sense, because I'm about to talk about a song where, like I said, it's my favorite part, where all of a sudden she gets sucked into the world and she is forced to sing this song. She's already sang 2 songs before this.
Wait, which
It would
song
have
was it
made
at the end, or was this
this was
they're on the beach,
the
like
bit
singing for a bit?
where they're trying to get the other 2 leads to, because like I said, they accidentally messed up their meet cute, and now the leads are now in love with them.
They're outside
So
Big
now,
Mama's.
yes,
Which
yeah.
missed
So
opportunity for not
now,
going at Big Mama's house. Just saying.
sure. Well, yeah. I mean, it. Of course,
It's
there's going
wishful
to be derivative
it's wishful
things.
thinking. It's stupid.
Yeah.
But
But they've finally, they're trying to get those 2 to meet up, and they're just having a conversation, and all of a sudden music starts playing and they just start singing. Like I said, this would be much more impactful if she hadn't sang 2 songs right before this. If this had happened before those songs happened, it would have made a lot more sense. But I still love the song, because not only are they actively singing about not wanting to sing, which is very meta and fun, but there's also like a physical humor thing that's going along, because they're also being forced to do this choreography that they don't understand. It feels like in the line of, and I'm not going to say that it's on the same level, but it feels in a similar vein to something like a Make 'Em Laugh from Singing in the Rain, which is, in the upper echelons of,
comedic musical numbers,
comedic musical numbers, physical comedy. It's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
And while obviously this is kind of the junior version of that, it feels like somebody really liked that and they said, let's do something like that. So it feels kind of like an homage. So I really appreciate that to it. And I will also say, I think that Ross Lynch in this film is really good. Not only does he sing very well, but his dancing is phenomenal, and his acting within these this type of stuff really works. I think Maya Mitchell also to a slightly lesser extent, where I think she shines is the kind of juxtaposition of
the straight man, basically, to him.
wanting to be part of this world.
Yeah.
But he fits in to a musical. And like I said, he's, for me, the character I would have wanted to be, because as a kid, I would watch these movie musicals and want to be in those numbers and get to do them. And his character gets to do those things. And I think that, the performance there is great. Because honestly, my other favorite song is the one, I mean, I don't like the title because it's so, it's Cruising for a Bruising.
Yeah.
It's so
it feels
overdone.
like a 60s song, I'll give it that.
But it does. It feels like a 60s song, and the choreography in that, the like just the over, like, it's just such a fun song. And I mean, I will say it does kind of break the reality a little bit, because it's like, okay, I kind of believe that he's seen the movie a million times. I get that if he has the ability at all, he would be able to be part of this.
Thank you.
But why do none of the people have an issue with suddenly he's part of their dance number?
Yeah. Yeah.
But again, it's a movie musical, so in order to enjoy it at all, you're gonna have to be okay with, you're gonna have to strap on your suspenders of disbelief.
Yeah, that one,
gonna,
I can buy that just because it's like you're a teen, we're teens, we're hanging out here in Big Mama's house. We're gonna. I know I said it.
The only thing that breaks it a little bit for me is that the scene right before that, the beach guys are like, "What are you guys doing? We don't like outsiders," and all this kind of stuff. And then the bikers suddenly are cool with it. And then after he's sung with the bikers, the beach guys are fine with him. Again,
Yeah.
I'm like, but it's a dumb 60s musical. That kind of thing would happen.
The Montague Capulet thing is like conveniently forgotten when it needs to be, like when
Yes.
the main plot is in the way.
But again, 60s musical, beach musical especially. If you watch those like clam bake beach musicals, some of the dumbest movies you've ever seen in your life. But there can actually be some really fun musical numbers and stuff like that. So, get it.
I was trying to think of like a song that like stood out to me as like I'm not trying to be an asshole. I not that I don't, not that I hate the songs. Nothing's sticking out to me as like that was my favorite.
See, and I occasionally listen to the soundtrack. So, fair. I mean, I will say definitely the two songs that I've mentioned stuck out to me from the beginning, but other ones have I've warmed up to as it has gone on. And I will say I liked this movie a lot more the second time I watched it than I did the first time, but I liked it the first time enough to share it with other people. So, yeah.
You mentioned earlier the leads doing things that didn't make sense. Like I don't have a list because I didn't write anything down. I didn't want that to be this type of discussion, but I guess it lines up with around that scene, the song that you refer to, because it's after they've split up the two. They've kept them from like falling into each other's arms, so to speak. That they both like connect with them respectively, and then they go outside and they like realize like, hey, like, whoa, like, what's going on? We broke them up. We have to fix this. We have to get them back together.
Right.
And then I think immediately after that, I think her name, I got the cast list in front of me. What's the lead beach teen's name?
The dude?
Yeah, no, the girl. Sorry, the girl who falls off the stage weirdly.
Okay, so the biker girl, that's Layla.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah. I mean, she didn't have me on my knees, but like what she did confuse me was that she approaches them and she says, "Are you guys together?" Because she's like she's really interested in the Brady character, and this is the point where I was like, "This is y'all's opportunity to say yes."
Honestly, I don't know why. That I will say that is one. I mean, in a way, I kind of get it because just before that, they had a scene where she is saying, "We have to break up because I have to move, and I don't want to." I mean, it's silly reasons for breaking up, but no sillier than any of the real reasons that anybody ever has for breaking up. Especially teenagers. So I kind of got that, but no, you're right. If she had just said, "Yeah, we're together," at least she's not interested in Brady.
Yeah. Now, granted, you could argue that
still got to get her
find a way to
with
get them
the
together.
Right.
But like they can still like I would argue they could still achieve. Honestly, it would make their lives easier because they don't have to like break off emotional attachments that are already
right. But there's also some fun little. I mean, honestly, I noticed this last night. There is a song. I'm trying to remember the name of it right now. It's one of the first ones after they fall for each other. Falling for You. So the
Yeah.
leads from the movie, Layla and Tanner, are singing a duet, but two other people, which I found really fun because they're literally like singing the same words, and like if you weren't listening, if you were just listening to the song and not watching it, you'd think they were singing to each other. But when you see the visual, you realize that they're singing this duet, so they're singing together with each other vocally, but visually to other people. So, I mean, you know, I thought that was actually a fun little thing.
I do like the
Because
duet.
it's basically showing that, you know, this is a song that we would have sung to each other had the plot not changed. But because you've changed this plot, we're going to do it the same way. It's just our faces are going to be facing different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be looking at different people. So, you know, I mean, I get your arguments, and like I said, I completely get why somebody wouldn't like this movie. I get why you wouldn't like this movie, especially when I realized how many of the jokes are based on puns. But at the same time, I do think that there is some really smart stuff in it.
And we're like I said, where I think I'll kind of meet you in the middle on that one is that a lot of the more frustrating parts of the movie for me are areas where it's a problem, but I also could see ways, and even like pretty easily, that it could be circumvented. Like I said, with that one, it's like yeah, it led to fun moments with the opposite directions that you're talking about. But again, I feel like you could, I don't know, like you could focus more on like the actual divide between the classism with the group in there, which I do feel kind of takes a backseat throughout the movie a lot of the time. And again, I'm not saying that it has to, but I think I think that there's like a fun. Did you ever see Last Action Hero?
You know, I don't know if I have seen the entire film.
Hmm.
And if I have, it has been years and I barely remember it.
I think that I'm not saying that it needs to copy that movie note for note, and I'm not saying it needs to even try to copy the movie, even generally speaking. But I think something that movie does well is that, you know, you have the boy interacting with the action movie that he knows like the back of his hand, and how he takes advantage of those things that he knows is coming, or things or cliches that he knows to expect, and shape that. And given that, I would argue in the current zeitgeist, that's a pretty forgotten about movie. I think that you could still do something along those lines.
It's definitely maligned. Like it wasn't received well when it first came out. I think there are definitely a lot of people, especially within the movie space, that have reevaluated it.
Sure, but I guess I mean, circling back to like the intended demographic for this movie, it's probably like fair enough to say that they probably aren't familiar with that film. To where I guess what I'm getting at is that I think you could do something along those lines without coming off as like not even an homage, like not like a ripoff or homage.
Mm-hmm.
With I'm trying, my train of thought got derailed, which again, Teen Beach Movie.
I mean, I will say something I wanted to say earlier is another way to solve the problem that you brought up. You know, like, you know, are you guys together? No, we're not. She could have just not asked the question. She didn't have to ask that question.
Yeah.
You know? So, I mean, and then we just wouldn't have had this. Well, why didn't you just say yes?
Yeah, the will she, won't she thing. It's like, we know. It's just.
Yeah.
I know where I remember where I was going, but I guess it involves a bit of a pivot to a different part of the movie.
That's fine.
We
can go wherever we need to go.
So, a good ways in the movie, I'm thinking, all right, we see the Big Mama character in the background, but you know, it's really weird how we don't have like any adult characters. And the movie, I guess, heard me, and we got to the villains. Do we want to talk about them?
I will say,
I want you to say whatever you want. Don't worry about me. Be candid, be honest.
I will say, with the exception of like a couple of lines here and there are a couple of things that I think they do that are funny. but for the most part, they're the weakest part of the film. Their whole plot, again, it's supposed to be ridiculous sci-fi 60s villain plot, but I do wish that there was a little bit more to it. You know, I will say I'm pretty sure that one of them was in an episode of Ghost Rider. I'm pretty sure
Was that Poulet?
huh? Yes, I'm pretty sure he played Audubon Poulet.
That's why you picked this one, because I saw that episode with you. Now it makes sense.
Wait, no, we didn't do that episode.
Yeah, we did. Day of the Condor.
No, you and I did the drug episode.
It was the second one.
I forgot you came back for the second one.
I did.
I completely forgot about that. I forgot you came back. Yes, he was. He was Audubon Poulet.
Yeah, that stupid fucking bird.
I mean, and even in that, I remember we said that he was kind of fun, but also like really arch and over the top and a little dark for a kid's film.
Yeah. But now we see what happens when you do like 2 more decades doing the same kind of character, what that does to you.
It really is very similar. I will argue actually not as dark.
Yeah.
I do think that the little meta thing that got thrown in where he realizes that he's a fictional character was kind of funny. But yeah, I mean, I agree. I feel like that should have happened. I feel like that should have happened earlier, and they should have had an existential. Okay, so I'm going to talk about another kids show because I have been working in elementary schools a lot. I've been substitute teaching, and so I end up watching a lot more kids programming than I normally would. And I stumbled on one the other day when I was doing one of my surprise kindergarten sessions. They put on this show on PBS Kids. Typically when they do that, they put on like Wild Kratts or something like that, which I really don't pay much attention to. But they put this thing on called Word Girl, which is basically she's like a superhero that just specializes in like she just has a big vocabulary.
Okay.
That's her superpower. But there is
she's an asshole by
yeah.
Right.
So there is a story in which she goes to this magic show and she gets pulled up as the assistant in this like vanishing cabinet trick or no, I think it's just like a regular trick. And all of a sudden she gets like called to go solve like a word problem or whatever. And so the guy is doing his magic and all of a sudden she disappears and everybody applauds. And they're just like, yeah. And the magician doesn't do what you'd expect him to do on a kid's show. Like, yeah, I'm the best or anything like that. He starts having an existential crisis about the power that he suddenly has and how he does not want this praise or applause or power. And I was just like, what is happening on this kid's show? This is great. Yeah. This is brilliant. And then when she comes back, he renounces magic. Like it was so funny. Like I did not expect a joke on that level in a kid's show.
Yeah.
You know, you expect them to go the place any show, much less kid show, would go. And they go to an existential crisis. And it was phenomenal. So yeah, I was really wish that they had gone there and that had kind of become a bit more of the thrust of these villain or at least his character.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really just a couple of lines and I was like, I feel like there was so much more to play with here.
That reminds me of that Spy Kids 2 quote that went around where like Steve Buscemi is like, do you think God stays in heaven because he too lives in fear of what he created? Like having that to kids movie, I'm like, but see that I like that. Like again, like I think like the best quote unquote kids movie. I think there's a divide between family movies and kids movies. Like I think
Sure.
Flow is a family movie. I think Paw Patrol is a kids movie. I think like what makes the kids movies a little bit more appreciative is like when you have those little moments like that where it's like, all right, that's something for the adults who are sitting with the kids in the room. Just that
Sure.
one little kernel to say like, hey, we're here for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, it's still blowing my mind that we've seen that guy before in something that we've talked about in the podcast.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I didn't even remember that. And I actually just recently re-listened to those, and I did not remember that you had been on that one as well. That is so funny.
So I agree with you. I think that their storyline was probably the weakest element of the story as far as like a subplot goes. And for a lot of reasons, I get that it's the concept is an homage to 60s movies, but I haven't seen. I'm not gonna pretend like I've seen like a wealth of 60s beach films, but I can't think of anything that comes to mind that could be like this. A mad scientist making a weather machine is a subplot of a beach movie. Usually, it's like honestly, like this is where I kind of get frustrated with the movie a little bit because I think it almost felt like a studio note sort of thing. I feel like an earlier draft was like these guys want to get the real estate, they're real estate investors and they're after it, but Disney said we have to make it bigger, we have to make it crazier, wackier.
It feels a little bit like an invasion from a 60s era sci-fi movie
or like a Bond movie even.
Sure. Well, I mean, it feels like, something like from like the brain from outer space or something like that. But you wouldn't typically see that mashed up with a beach movie. But I mean, who's to say that doesn't exist?
I mean, I can't say without further research. I guess what I'm saying is like I feel like it's an unnecessary an unnecessary overcomplication. Like you have some special effects going into this. You have like a whole new set being made for like this mad scientist lab thing that they're going with. But again, I think the movie could have been just fine and equally effective if they just went with these guys are like real estate crazy people. And they're because again, like the Flintstones movie from like the 90s like had that as a subplot. The bad guy wanted to get real estate. That's like it's not like it's too boring or too like adult for this type of movie to pull off. And I guess you can also
Kyle MacLachlan, by the way.
Huh?
The bad guy in that movie,
exactly.
Kyle MacLachlan.
And Halle Berry as Miss Stone.
Yes.
Didn't forget that one.
As Sharon Stone.
Yeah, but you know what? I call her Miss Stone. I'm a gentleman.
Yeah.
And also wanting to forget. But you could also then argue like, well, how do they get these storm?
Make you watch the Flintstones. Let's be honest here.
The argument then comes in. It's like, how do you incorporate like the storm? Because like that's what got them there. This is just my take on this one. Again, it saves money on special effects, saves complications to the story. Cut the storm thing. She surfs. She hits her head on something. Maybe he does too. I don't know. And then they get there. The weather machine thing, I just don't. I would argue.
I will say the way that they get in. I mean, honestly, to me, the best part of the movie is the film within the film.
Yes.
Everything outside of that, I'm not.
Devil's in the details. Yeah, it's like a magic surfboard that gets in there, but it's never really fleshed out.
I mean, I will say, I know you kind of made fun of him, but I do kind of like that Barry Bostwick is her grandfather. Number one, because no reality does it look like Barry Bostwick could actually.
I didn't know it was until you just told me. So,
oh yeah, wow. You know who Barry Bostwick is?
Yeah.
So I do think it's kind of funny that he's playing her grandfather. But outside of just Barry Bostwick being there, I really don't care about and honestly, the whole them randomly having a musical number in the real world, that honestly does kind of
gotta have her finale. I mean, I with the villain thing though, I guess like again, I think that they are only there to exist in order to like create a storm to get them back to the real world. I think that's the only reason that they're there. And maybe I guess make some like some sort of an action scene, even though like it's just the teenagers go up to like the mad scientist base and they just take over, even though apparently these guys have like a magical laser gun that they just don't have when they need it. But I think where you could have saved so much budget and again make a little bit more of a coherent story is just take those guys out, make them like real estate moguls, whatever. But instead of having to get back via storm, they conclude that in order to get back, we have to finish the movie. And then you have these two having to work together to get the events in the movie to line up. And then you also get more interaction on the front of like, hey, here's like how these two classes get along. We encourage this. You know what I mean?
I mean, even if I think if you are going to have them, you just need to push them further.
Yeah.
I feel like we were too much in a middle ground. We needed to either not have them or make them even sillier than they were. You know, make them even more arch, more, you know, go, you know, like almost like, you know, like a Ming the Merciless from like, you know, what's it called? Flash Gordon. Or, I mean, have you ever watched Star Trek Voyager?
No.
Okay, so they do a bit in that where one of the pilot of the show basically gets obsessed with like a 1930s 40s serial Flash Gordon-esque, and I mean honestly it feels very much like Flash Gordon. If the villains were like that, just over the top, campy, melodramatic, you know, big, you know, shoulder pads, and, you know, even if they were like visiting aliens and you did something like that, that I think would have fit better than these kind of arch, but also kind of milquetoast and also kind of boring, but slightly meta. It's like there was too many half strokes,
and again you could circumvent like going with off of that would have made like the whole real estate thing that I'm kind of getting at, like real estate just douchebag businessy corporate guys in suits, basically make them like over the top campy suits, and I think you got your problem solved. And there's moment, it almost feels like to your point, it almost feels like the concept of them was more goofier than the actual performance.
Well, I think they got lost in the plot for why these guys were there.
Yeah.
And they should have just it doesn't really matter why they're there.
Yeah,
they just want to stir up shit for this beach.
Yeah. If you could invent a weather changing machine, like again, not to be like too realistic in this crazy movie.
Who cares why?
Yeah, you're a god. Yeah. Like you can get a country, not let alone a beach house with that.
Yeah.
And yeah, so like again, there's moments where like they're trying to get into that sort of thing, and like the what was it, the plutonium joke that they kind of did in the fridge. They have two vials in the fridge, and one's green, one's red, and he drinks the green one.
He grabs the green and he goes, "Ooh, plutonium," and he goes, "No, lime soda," and he drinks it. And then there's a red one, and he goes to drink it, and he goes, "Ooh, strawberry soda," and he starts to drink it, and he goes, "No, plutonium."
But then where it really like just grinds my gears is where he takes the thing and he goes, "This red vial, one day it will turn green, and then it will be plutonium that will help us conquer the world." And I'm thinking, all right, is this set up for something? Like, are they going to be like, ha ha ha, with this plutonium, I will finally end this. You're all, you know, and then he pours it in. Oops, it's lime soda. And that's the joke. But they do nothing with that. And I'm like, what was the, you know?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the joke, dumb and silly, but I did kind of think it was I got a little chuckle out of it.
I guess
what I'm saying is like, the setup is pointless.
Why do you say one day it will turn green? I'm like, why didn't you?
Why there's no reason for that.
Yeah.
No reason for that. Yeah.
But anyway, I'm sorry. We've the villains are way too minor for us to have talked about this much about them. So, but
it's fine.
Say something else nice, and I'll be nice as I can.
I mean, there's not a whole lot else that I want to talk about. I mean, I will say, I do like, I like a good majority of the songs. I like
Mm.
the Like Me song, which is kind of the back and forth between the girls and the guys hanging out. And I mean, that's where we're kind of seeing the juxtaposition of the 60s and, to 2010 sensibility
Yes, I like
of
that.
the
Those
way
moments a
that,
lot.
yeah.
You get both
I mean,
both perspectives.
honestly, as you know, it's in the most um surface way, but the idea of a 2010s girl teaching a 60s girl about, feminism, uh
Mm.
I kind of enjoyed,
Very rapture,
and
blister, burn. I dig it.
yeah, I mean, I do enjoy that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, Uh, y I mean, like I said, I wasn't I don't really think that they need to do a final number in the real world, although I do enjoy the song, and I really enjoy the choreography in this movie. I think that when I'm getting to watch
I do like the
dance
choreography.
numbers
Yeah, very good
is
dancers.
it
Very good dancers.
some of the most fun. Like, I'm honestly, I'm watching these kids and I'm like, I'm like, "Man, I wish I was like 10 years younger and was more coordinated because I would try to learn how to do this type of dancing. Like it made me feel like I felt watching those musicals as a kid,
Yeah,
so yeah, I mean, again, I know that there's silly stuff, there's plot issues, but it's almost like I kind of expect that with a film
it's
like
gotta have a
this.
finale. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I am able to forgive those sins because it gives me the fun campiness that I'm looking for, while at the same time being willing to comment on the campiness and make a joke out of it, you know.
I'm trying to think of like, because I agree with you. I see what you're getting at with that one. And again, like again, you need a big finisher, and when they're back in the real world, becomes difficult how to do that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of like how I would change it, like to I mean, how I would personally prefer it if I had to. And I guess let me throw this out there and see if anything sticks. Um, Alternatively, she makes her peace with her aunt. She says, "I'm staying here." They go back inside the house where the musical's still playing, and then we just kind of zoom in on the screen, transition over through the screen sort of like effect, and then like that's the
Mhm.
finisher. They're in the
Sure.
movie. They're in the movie now this time, and they're doing
Right.
their shit, and that's how the movie ends.
Yeah, I mean that, or I mean, this is a little bit more contrived plotty stuff, but what if, after their big, reconciliation, kick the can to the curb, they
Mm.
realize that they still have a bit of, because their real life stuff hung around in when they were in the musical for a little bit. What if somehow they realize that the musical stuff is still kind of, you know, they've got like enough for like one last big silly thing. Let's do a musical number,
Well, there's something
something like
there
that.
because the mid-credit scene
Yeah.
reveals like the musical people are now in their world.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that they're setting up the sequel.
Yeah.
Um, which I've heard actually isn't great. Um, I
Oh,
mean,
that one's
yeah,
not
that
great.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
That
I
means
think I know
something
my next
completely
movie I'm
different to
picking.
you. I mean, I haven't seen it either. So yeah. All right. Well, is there
We
anything else that you wanted to mention before we
Well, we got 2 hours before we're over our time before we beat our record for flow, so let's keep talking about this.
Oh, jeez. The movie that you enjoyed the least, that's the one that you want to keep.
I just think there's a beautiful symmetry. Just Jack just does not shut up when he's passionate about the movie, whether for hatred or for love.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
which I guess is
I
like
mean,
human
I will
nature.
say you really, I mean, and I know you're holding back a little bit, reminding yourself that that you're not necessarily the target demographic, but you really haven't been vitriolic about this film.
I've been nice.
Sure.
I could give it the it came from the bottom treatment, but one that take a lot of time and a lot of notes and a long ass podcast.
Sure.
And again, I think it would detract from like what we set out to do with this, which was more so again just discussion. Because again, it's not even if I feel strongly positively or negatively about a movie, and it's same I think you'd agree to on this side for yourself. It's we can't focus on that. It's got to be give and take. And again, I'm not you picked this movie because it's close to your heart, and I want to appreciate that. It's not. I think it's clear that this one wasn't for me, but I am. But it's still something. It's still an experience that I got to have. I mean, again, that's what that's the whole reason we even said let's do this thing so we can get new experiences through filmmaking, whether it be for good or bad. And again, I made you watch North. I made you watch Nothing But Trouble. I have some fun little doozies ahead of us. But that's just I'm not. I can be vitriolic. I can even play it up for laughs. But I feel like that just would tip the scale too much in the wrong direction for discussion.
I mean, I will say, though, the difference between this movie and those movies is that you knew that those weren't good. I mean, I will say, rewatching it last night, I was like, I knew there was a very good chance that you were going to come in here saying that you didn't like it. I honestly did. I was like, oh yeah, I kind of forgot a little bit about the sensibilities and who Jack is. But I still
and I'm not suggesting that you picked this knowing that I would hate it.
I didn't. I picked it
movies,
thinking that you might like it. And it honestly didn't even dawn on me that you might not until I rewatched it last night.
But again, there's nothing wrong with that. Like if you have any more movies where you're like either on the fence or like Jack's gonna fucking hate this movie, go for it. Because again, it's
at the same time, I do think it's interesting that we finally hit on a movie that we disagree on.
Yeah, exactly.
And we can still have good conversation about it.
Exactly.
And you're not gonna accuse me of being a flat earther.
Yes. I don't want like it's like the whole Captain America thing. It's like you're either a Marvel shill or you're woke. And it's like, okay, well, if that's the binary, then I don't want to be part of this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah. Like I said, that's what it's about for me. It's you appreciate movies or any kind of artistic form, the more of it you consume, and that involves the good and the bad, whether or not you perceive it that way, what have you. It's like, if The Room was the best, it was the first movie I'd ever seen, then it's going to be the best movie I've ever seen. Or excuse me, let me rephrase. If The Room's the only movie I've seen, then it's the best movie I've ever seen, objectively speaking.
Yeah.
So
it's also the worst movie you've ever seen.
Huh? Was it? Oh,
it's also the worst movie you've ever seen.
Not even close. But again,
I'm saying if you've only seen.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, the best.
It's both the best and the worst because you've only seen one.
Yes.
Yeah.
So like I said, I'm not. I guess this gets the question part, unless there's anything you want to talk about prior to as far as the film goes. But am I mad I watched this? No, I'm not mad I watched it. Again, it gave me like I said, kind of going back to what you're saying about North and Nothing But Trouble, respectively. Like those movies were picked not because I expected them to be like a positive movie experience for us, but because it's an experience worth talking about. It's an emotionally stimulating like experience, and I would say that this movie is the same, even though it wasn't necessarily intended with the same outlook. I think if I wanted to pick like a bad movie like for us to watch, like I just wanted to piss you off with, or just like have like a bad experience with overall, I would say like Ridley Scott's Alexander, like something that just doesn't have like anything important to say or like that's worth talking about. But again, like we have had now an hour and 15-minute conversation about a movie that I didn't like so much, but again, we got perspective shared, and that's what's important.
I will push back a little bit more on the comparison to North, because at least this one isn't offensive.
Fair.
There are parts of North that are straight up offensive.
But like I said, with that and along with Nothing But Trouble, like the selling point for me was it's a bonkers movie to watch.
Yes,
like,
and it's a conversation worth having.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
All
I guess
right.
that's all I got to say about this one, I suppose.
All right. All right. So want to go ahead and let people know how they can get into contact with us. So of course, all the socials at the Flying Cow Pod. Make sure you can also email us at theflyingcowpod@gmail.com. Check out everything that we've got going on. Right now, I am probably a few weeks into a new project called Fantasy Food Challenge, or sorry, Showdown. I keep flipping those words. Fantasy Food Showdown, where we are reviewing the current season of Tournament of Champions on the Food Network. So we're reviewing a cooking show. First time I've ever done that on the channel. We're having a good time over there so far. So I hope you check it out. Yeah, Jack, anything that you want to share?
Yeah, I plugged it last time, but I'll plug it again. I got
Mhm.
well, I guess here's how I connected. Yeah, if you're listening at home and you like this movie, Teen Beach Movie, and you're mad at me for making fun of the writing, here's your chance to make fun of my writing, because I wrote a season of an audio sci-fi fantasy drama that's coming out later this year. It's called Children of the Ashen Star. We're currently casting for the first couple of episodes, but the ball's gonna be rolling pretty soon on production, so I'll be letting you guys know somehow once we're up and going. But in the meantime, stay tuned and get excited, especially if you want to have a good chance of taking a pot shot at me if you're not. But yeah, that's about all I got to say about it.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. And normally this would be the point at which Jack would announce what movie I am going to be watching.
Smurfs
But
2.
as we, yes, as we have mentioned earlier, we're going to take just a little bit of a break. I don't know how long, but we're kind of wrapping up what we're calling the first season of the show, because we've had some ideas for some ways that we can make things even more interesting.
Hot
Make
tub streaming.
our I'm sorry, what was that?
It's at hot tub streaming.
Yes. Yep, we're gonna be streaming from the tubs. Yep,
Yeah,
we're gonna
don't
be completely
not to get you all
naked.
too excited, but
Yeah.
we've got Amarav.
Yeah. I mean, who's to say we're not already naked recording this?
I mean, I'm not
Ne-
wearing pants, so for what it's worth.
Next time we'll be in a tub.
Yeah.
But no, we're gonna try to shake things up a little bit, make our picks even more challenging,
With jets.
um, and possibly end up watching some movies that we really hate. But yeah, we'll be, once we put everything together and we can get a few episodes recorded, we will go ahead and I think we've pitched kind of doing another episode where we talk a little bit about stuff. So we'll probably start off with something like that, where we kind of just introduce the new concept, and then just kind of shoot the shit about movies for a little bit, and then get into reviews once again. But I look forward to that. I'm sure Jack does too. Hopefully you will as well. But until that time, moo.
Uh,
Moo.